After an unexpected call, Alex Eala became irate with Aryna Sabalenka. "You're not serious." It was just another point in an instant. The next frenzy broke out. Eala lost it as the line judge raised her hand and the audience fell silent. "Are you serious?" Her voice ripped through the tension like thunder as she yelled. Cool and unconcerned, Sabalenka grinned, but her eyes conveyed a different message. This was a declaration rather than merely a disagreement. Eala had been followed for months by rumors that she was too raw, too young, and too sentimental. However, she made the decision to stop swallowing it that evening. The stadium froze when she turned to face Sabalenka and shouted, "Say that again!" This was the start of a rivalry that would completely upend women's tennis, even if no one realized it at the time. It was meant to be simply another match at night. The kind that begins with cheers, courteous grins, and the gentle sound of tennis balls hitting the lighting. Alex Eala entered the court with her typical calm assurance, resolute and focused, but with a deeper secret. She had spent months anticipating this match. Standing on the opposite side of the net, Aryna Sabalenka, the world #1, the symbol of supremacy, stretched, grinned, and exuded the kind of energy that says, "I own this place." The audience perceived it as a contest between ambition and experience. However, there was more to it than that. Eala was playing for respect rather than just points. She had been warned repeatedly that she wasn't ready, that she was too passionate, and that her passion was a weakness for the past year as she battled to prove she belonged among the top. She was reminded by every headline, talent? Indeed. Yet unprocessed. She was sick of that word tonight. Meanwhile, Sabalenka had just emerged from her own storm. She had something to defend after a series of difficult defeats and allegations of conflict in the locker room. Her throne, her image, her power. Eala wasn't just another rival in that regard. Before she could rise, she posed a threat to be squashed. Thunderous serves and vicious rallies kicked off the first set. Eala's accuracy met Sabalenka's strength. Neither of them was eager to flinch first, and each shot sounded like a declaration. Before the strain got nearly intolerable, the scoreboard ticked evenly, 3-3, 4-4. It was electrifying and thick in the air. Each point appeared to be more significant than it ought to be. Sabalenka glanced over and grinned during the changeover. That distinctive smile that had depressed so many people in the past. Eala, however, did not turn away. She looked directly into that stare for the first time. Just fire, no hesitation, no fear. It was also felt by the pundits. "There's something unusual about Eala tonight," one of them muttered. "She is not going to give up." They were correct, too. Something had changed inside of her that was irreversible. The following point started as the audience leaned forward. And then the time would come. The stadium was quieted by the one who would stop time and ignite the debate that would define the game. But that will happen later. Because there was still a fragile, quivering quiet before the storm, right before everything detonated. When it happened, the second set had just started. One long, grueling, and stunning rally. Both players chased the lines for 23 shots without blinking. Every argument left the audience gasping and on their feet. Then the time arrived. The one that would set everything on fire. Eala hit a forehand down the line that was so accurate, clean, and sharp that it kissed the chalk. Sabalenka froze, the audience screamed, and for a split second, everyone thought it had won. Next. The call is out. The voice of the line judge cut like a knife through the commotion. Confusion followed the cheers, and finally there was silence. With a heaving chest, Eala halted in her tracks. The ball had left a noticeable trace, hitting the very edge of the white line, and her eyes darted to the mark. With a look of amazement on her face, she pointed at it. "It's in." Her voice broke with emotion as she yelled. "That's definitely in." The chair umpire remained still. With a smirk on her lips, Sabalenka raised an eyebrow as she approached the net. "Just loud enough for Eala to hear," she remarked. "Maybe check your aim next time." Perhaps it was intended as a joke. It was gasoline on fire, either way. Eala lost her temper. "Are you serious at this moment?" With a snap, she moved in closer. The ball was in. Calm and aloof, the umpire peered down. "The call stands, Miss Eala. Play, please." The audience started whispering. Flashes clicked and phones were raised. Everyone sensed that something was falling apart. Eala faced Sabalenka once more. "Did you see it? Inform them that it was in." Sabalenka shrugged, her face unreadable. "Not my call," she smiled. She was broken by that smile. "You're not serious." Eala's shout reverberated across the stadium. The expression, which sprang out of sheer annoyance, ignited the arena. The spectators gasped. Commentators fell silent. Even Sabalenka seems temporarily taken aback. Eala was more angry than anyone had ever seen her. The audience had already taken sides when the umpire gave a warning for unsportsmanlike behavior. Half applauded the fire of the young underdog. Calling for calm, half booed. What about Sabalenka? Grinning as if she had won more than a point, she made her way back to the baseline. But even she sensed the change on the inside. This Eala was different from the composed, orderly one she had previously encountered. This person was struggling to be heard. Someone who, after too many silent humiliations, had lost it. Eala's energy completely altered once play resumed. Every movement was sharper, every stroke more forceful. She was fighting for approval instead of participating in the match. Sabalenka observed that the right needed to be respected. The demonstrations grew shorter. The points became fights. Eala broke serve at 3-2 with a shout that seemed to cut through the cacophony. The audience let forth a roar. It was impossible to miss the fire in her eyes. However, Sabalenka relied on her experience just as it appeared that she had turned things around. She took her time between points, slowed down the game, and interfered with the rhythm. She would also look at Eala with each pause. The tension between them was now personal, with the same smile and taunt. What had begun as a poor decision turned into a conflict between pride, ego, and willpower. It was the most thrilling moment of the game, according to commentators, not because of the outcome but rather because of what was revealed. That call, just one word out, became the focal point of a maelstrom that would follow them long after the game was over. It was a young player's breaking point, a champion's provocation, and an umpire's quiet that altered everything. Because something greater than tennis had started in that moment. A conflict, a declaration, a boundary between eras rather than on the court. The stadium was a hive of activity by the end of the game. Sabalenka persevered because of her experience, even though Alex Eala had fought until the very end. The handshake was icy, a quick touch of fingers, and the eyes were fiery and bitter. Every frame was captured by cameras, and the world saw it in a matter of minutes. Before the players had even entered the locker room, videos were all over social media. Alice lashes out at Sabalenka. "You're not serious." The fury that rocked Dubai. The headlines were ruthless. However, the fans were also. Eala supporters came together on one side to stand up for her. That ball was in, and she is correct. She was robbed by the umpire. Passion does not equate to contempt. It's necessary for tennis. To support their argument, her supporters cut slow-motion videos of the ball mark and drew circles around the faint chalk dust. Tennis was no longer the only thing. It was about a young player who dared to question the hierarchy and about justice. However, Sabalenka's supporters were equally boisterous. She became uncontrollable. A professional doesn't act that way. You don't belong here if you can't manage pressure. More hurtful than any defeat was the accusation that Eala was manipulating drama to maintain her relevance. Aryna Sabalenka, meanwhile, was the first to speak up. She said, "It's tennis," with a small smile during her post-match press conference. Emotions can take control at times. "I know what it's like, but you have to maintain your composure." Although the remark appeared composed and even elegant, it was hurtful. It seemed like counsel from a veteran to many. Others saw it as courtesy disguised as disdain. Later, in a more subdued environment, Eala talked, her eyes still red from the battle. "All I wanted was justice. I wasn't disrespecting anyone," she whispered. Eala couldn't keep quiet. Just that sentence became a platform-wide rallying cry. Overnight, "Just wanted fairness" became popular. Her remarks were transformed by fans into quotations, images, and even TikTok modifications. However, criticism followed every share, and reaction followed every defense. Journalists covering tennis started analyzing every aspect of the call. Some said it was impossible to see the ball well due to the umpire's stance. Others felt that while the call was right, the response wasn't. Additionally, both players remained silent, at least in public, during all the commotion. Insiders whispered behind closed doors that there was more friction between Eala and Sabalenka than just that one call. A sarcastic remark in the corridor days earlier, a stare-down during warm-ups. Piece by piece, it all started to come to light. Perhaps the cause wasn't the call. Perhaps it was a spark on a stack of petrol that was about to catch fire. The scene grew legendary as the hours stretched into days, and it was reenacted, examined, and exaggerated. The two words, "you can't," turned into a meme, a message, a movement, and, while the internet debated, Eala's angry, incredulous, and heartbroken countenance from that evening started to haunt the sports discourse because everyone knew the tale wasn't finished. It would be more than a match the next time these two crossed paths. It would be private. Silence was more powerful than any interview in the days that followed. Alex Eala vanished from the public eye. No statements, tweets, or press. Just quiet. However, you are no longer protected by quiet. All it does is give the world time to construct its own narrative. Her outburst was replayed on loop by sports talk shows. Every move, phrase, and glance between her and Sabalenka was examined by analysts. The moment she lost control was referred to as the meltdown. The cost of immaturity. Few people dared to publicly express their admiration for her fire, while others silently predicted that it would haunt her early career. Sabalenka's camp, meanwhile, maneuvered precisely. The story was written by her PR team. Despite the turmoil, Aryna remained collected, professional, and quiet. They published flawless training videos while grinning, joking, and exuding self-assurance. She appeared unfazed. Unfazed, triumphant. It was an effective masterclass in picture control. The headlines gradually changed. Sabalenka's poise serves as a model for the following generation. And Eala's silence became heavier with each headline. Eala watched the match 100 times in her tiny Madrid apartment. She heard the audience, saw the call, and saw the ball hit the line frame by frame. Her memory was scarred by every detail. That evening, she lost the benefit of the doubt in addition to a point. She experienced the cruelty of perception for the first time. Her coach attempted to dissuade her. "Alex, let it go. This will go away." She shook her head though. She muttered, "No, it won't. Not until I confront her once more." Because that one call was no longer the focus. It has to do with how fast the world changed. How a moment of candor could be perverted into conceit. How a young woman's expression of emotion might be exploited against her. The fine followed. A $5,000 fine for using foul language while playing. Although it wasn't very severe, it felt like yet another setback and a reminder that she had been branded. In a succinct statement, the Federation said, "We maintain the highest standards of conduct." Eala, however, saw it as a sentence etched in stone. Her supporters retaliated more forcefully on social media. By contrasting her response with that of male players who had performed worse but received less punishment, they exposed double standards. Timelines were overrun with footage of legendary outbursts, rackets being broken, and umpires being yelled at. However, Eala was the one who was deemed impolite in some way. Then, when the storm appeared to be abating, Sabalenka shared a single image on Instagram that caused it to flare up again. A court of practice. A grin. There are no tags and the caption is always somber. Not a word. However, everyone was aware of the target. The comments section blew up. Eala is being trolled by her. Actions of a queen. I adore it, but it's petty. Eala noticed it. She remained silent. Didn't enjoy it. Didn't block her. With her jaw clenched and her heart steady, she gazed at it for a considerable amount of time before whispering, "Next time, let's see who's serious." She went back to the court that evening. No crowd, no cameras. She was alone with a bucket of balls and the sound of her own breathing. Every forehand cut was crisper and every serve cracked louder than the last. Silently and with knowledge, her coach observed from the corner. This was no longer practice. This was getting ready. For a reckoning, not for another competition. Because a period of calm is necessary for every storm before it resumes. Furthermore, Alex Eala's quiet was not a sign of weakness. It sounded like someone honing her retaliation. Weeks went by. New tales and disputes emerged on the internet. For Alex Eala, however, the noise never quite subsided. It simply sank farther into the silent recesses of her thoughts. She heard memories of that evening every time she worked out. "You're not serious." Sabalenka's sneer, the umpire's disinterest, the muttering of the crowd. She was unable to break free from the rerun. However, in the right hands, suffering turns into fuel. Eala was also learning how to burn silently. Her coach was the first to notice the change. The weak serves, the defensive rallies, and the shy looks were all gone. Every ball was now hit with intention, and every motion was harder, smoother, and sharper. She had stopped playing to prove herself. She was pretending to be respectful. She used to be explosive, but now she used her emotional flame as a weapon. Sophisticated, regulated, and perilous. Then came the news that would change everything once more. When Miami's tournament draw was made public a few weeks later, fate had decided, almost cruelly, to set up a repeat. Aryna Sabalenka versus Alex Eala. Round of 16. Social media erupted and the tennis world froze. Once more, here we go. Eala's retaliation? Is Sabalenka able to maintain composure under duress? The hashtags poured in. Eala and the internet both remembered. However, she didn't post anything this time. No interviews. No quotes. No statements. One picture of her racket, ready and taped, with a caption about her narrative. Let's complete the task at hand. The excitement was palpable on match day. The excitement in the arena was palpable. A blend of suspense and intrigue. People desired an encore of rage, a rematch of emotions, and pandemonium. However, Eala entered in a different manner. No obvious stress, no glare. Even Sabalenka was startled by the stillness. There was silence during the warm-up. Too quiet. Even the typically chatty Sabalenka was silent. Perhaps she sensed the shift in the atmosphere as well. The girl who yelled, "You can't be serious," was no longer Eala. You could sense the storm beneath her skin, even though she was calmer and colder now. Eala didn't hold back when the play started. She anticipated Sabalenka's power and skillfully redirected it with her precise movements. Each point was a declaration. Controlled rhythm and restrained aggression. The audience noticed a poetic development. A battle between variations of the same soul as well as between players. The time arrived at 4-3 in the second set. A ball skirting the line in a replay that was uncannily identical to that fatal call. The line judge paused, held out a hand and said, "Out." The air was filled with gasps. But Eala didn't flinch this time. She approached the mark with composure, examined it, glanced at the umpire, and grinned. A challenge. The screen sprang to life. Point Eala, ball in. The audience erupted. All she did was nod, return to the baseline, and serve an ace down the middle. Just dominance. No drama, no words. Sabalenka felt it, even if she attempted to ignore it. The rhythm is gone, and the control is sliding. Without even looking at her opponent, Eala ended the set with a composed fist pump. She didn't have to. The message had already been sent. "I've matured and am no longer terrified." Reporters flocked to her after the game, hoping for a soundbite to rekindle the rivalry as well as fire and emotion. Eala, however, just uttered one sentence. "Winning is sometimes the best course of action." It was earned, not shouted, poetic justice.